It's auction week in New York, and by that I don't mean there's an auction happening in New York this week. These are the biggest auctions of the year. Led by Christie's and Sotheby's, with a little help from Phillips, the big auction houses are poised to sell over $1.5 billion in art in just a few days. And yes, I know just a fraction of the population will ever compete in these high-dollar auctions. But I also know I'll never be a Formula One driver. That doesn't mean I don't like to watch the damn races. So, on the busiest week on the art market calendar, it seemed like a good opportunity to talk about all that's going on. Let's get into it. Art lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Christopher West, and this is the place where we talk all things modern and contemporary art and design. And today we are talking about one of the craziest weeks on the art calendar. Yes, there are auctions all over the world that pretty much happen every single week of the year. But the biggest auctions happen for just 1 week in November. And basically, since World War II, the epicenter of the art world has shifted from London to New York. And with that shift, the big auctions followed. Now, in a future video, I'll talk about the history of auctions and the auction houses. But for today's purposes, we are just talking about the big three: Christie's, Sotheby's, and Phillips. These are the biggest auction houses on the planet, and combined, they will be hosting more than 15 auctions in just 4 days. As you browse the online auction catalogs, you're going to see everything from Matisse to Agnes Martin. So what are the differences between all of these auctions, and when is it the most fun to watch? Basically, these sales can be broken down into 3 categories: the day sales, the evening sales, and the single owner sales. We'll start with arguably the most important, the single owner sale. As the name suggests, this is when an entire auction is dedicated to the collection of one person or family. There's basically 3 reasons an entire collection might come to the market at the same time, and those are the 3 Ds: death, divorce, and debt. And both Christie's and Sotheby's are showcasing collections this season as a result of the passing of 2 important collectors. Sotheby's features the estate of Cedell Miller, a cosmetic mogul who passed away earlier this year. They will have 2 sales dedicated to this collection that is expected to bring more than $200 million. Christie's is featuring the collection of the designer and philanthropist Mika Erdogan. And this sale is led by this work by Rene Magritte, which is expected to sell for more than $95 million. Obviously, landing these big single-owner collections is top priority for the auction houses. And it's incredibly competitive. And this is why Christie's and Sotheby's almost always catch the big fish. They both have literally spent centuries fostering relationships with the most important and privileged collectors. But not everyone has 100 pieces in their collection worthy of a dedicated sale. Sometimes a dude just wants a Warhol. And this leads us to our second category, the evening sales. Now, the evening sales is where the auction houses showcase their most important work from their most important clients. And getting work for these sales is also super competitive. Basically, the auction houses all know who owns the most important artworks. Big-time collectors don't own these works just to live like a recluse. They like to socialize and have parties, and often the bigwigs and staff at the auction houses operate in those same social circles. Collectors also like to loan their work to museums. Take a look at that last line on many of those museum wall labels. It will often say something like, "On loan from the collection of Mr. and Mrs. Rich Person." And it's also not uncommon that an auction house might have sold an artwork to a collector more than 20 years ago that they know would do well on today's market. Let's look at this Lenora Carrington, for example. Sotheby's first sold it in 1994 for around $300,000. And although it changed hands a couple more times, you can bet they kept track of its whereabouts. So now this year that the market for surrealist artworks is way up, you can be certain that they reached out to the owner of that work and said something like, this might be a pretty good time to sell. And indeed, it sold last night for more than $11 million. And these are the sales that tend to grab all the headlines. You want to see a banana sell for millions of dollars? Well, tune into Sothebys Wednesday night. Jackson Pollock more your style? You can catch that at Phillips on Tuesday. These auctions are all streamed live on their websites, and most of them you can watch right here on YouTube. And you might be thinking the big three are raking in all the money in these evening sales, but that's not necessarily true. They're really making money in our final, and to the casual observer often overlooked, category. Ah, the day sales. This is the category where all of the rest of the work goes. And yes, typically, this is where you can find more affordable work. But there's no hard and fast rule as to what price point gets included in an evening sale versus a day sale. You can still find work in the day sales that go for millions of dollars, and work in the evening sales that might sell for a few $100,000. But whereas the evening sales are more about the curated experience, the day sales are pretty much just about commerce. Yes, you have a lot of collectors buying at these auctions, but you also have a lot of dealers looking for inventory. If you're a dealer and you know you have clients that love Helen Frankenthaler but can't necessarily afford to buy the multi-million-dollar works during the evening sales, you may want to try and pick up a Frankenthaler during the day sales that you can then offer to them in the future for a tidy profit. So how do these day sales at their lower price points often make as much, if not more, as the auction houses make in their more prestigious evening sales? As I mentioned, all of these sales are super competitive. If one of the auction houses really wants a piece of art for their evening sale, they might tell the potential client that they will slash their commission to just 5%. And the next auction house might tell that same collector that they are actually going to charge them 0% commission on that sale. And the third auction house might say, not only am I going to charge you 0% seller's fee, but I'm also going to give you 20% of the fee I am charging to the buyer. So you can see how, in these evening sales in particular, it gets pretty easy to cut into those profits. But for the lower priced artwork in the day sales, there is much less negotiation. The auction house might tell you that they want the work, but this is the fee. Take it or leave it. And when you compound those profits with hundreds of works in the day sales, versus the maybe few dozen works at a much lesser margin in the evening sales, you start to see why the auction houses love the day sales. It's all a vicious cycle, folks. They need the prestige of the evening sales to get the material for the day sales, which help pay for the marketing of the evening sales. It's all nuts, but I find it fascinating. And I hope you do too, and hopefully now you have a little better idea of how this all works. I like talking about art, collecting, and the art market here on this channel. If you like at least one of those things, please consider subscribing. Everybody still watching is an absolute rock star, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Ciao!